I'm up at the Manx Museum with Yvonne, who looks after some amazing stuff. I mean, the Manx Museum can't display everything all the time, can it? You've got so much stuff behind the scenes.
Yes.
And one you brought out for us, especially today, is very emotive to a massive groundswell of change in the Isle of Man back in 1991 at Tynwald Hill. It was a deep intake of breath, I think most people remember, that we saw Alan Shea walking down Tynwald Hill in what is effectively a pair of pyjamas. I mean, that's what it is. But an absolute mind-changing moment for the Isle of Man, and this is the outfit that he was wearing. Can you remind us about what happened then?
Well, basically, Alan was actually sort of demonstrating his democratic right to present a petition of grievance. But rather than what normally happened, where somebody just went up to the hill, presented their petition of grievance, and that was it, people actually complained he made it theatrical. But that, I think, was good because it made it memorable, it made it visual, and I think it really brought home to people exactly how people felt and why that petition of grievance was considered so important for people. Because, as you say, these are just a pair of pyjamas purchased a few weeks before from Marks and Spencer's, and they've been dyed grey, painted with black stripes, a bit of fabric sewn onto them and a sticker put onto them. But when you look at them, you realise this is the uniform of a concentration camp inmate. This is the terrifyingly iconic striped, in a sense, grey pyjamas which inmates in the concentration camps wore. There's the pink triangle that would denote a gay inmate in a concentration camp. In this case, the pink triangle has 3 legs in the middle of it, so it is really making a statement about this is a Manx issue. I'm old enough to remember when you'd see people on television who were Holocaust survivors who would show their tattooed number on their wrist from their concentration camp experience, and here we have the number which is so reminiscent of those concentration camp tattoos, but here it's the phone number of government offices.
I thought I recognised that number.
That is the Isle of Man government offices used as the inmate number. It's also got a sticker, the AIDS crisis is not over, act up. And it's difficult to remember now that in the 1980s and the 1990s, just how terrifying the AIDS epidemic was, but even more so the fact that at that time people referred to it as a gay plague. It was seen as something that didn't actually affect the rest of the community, it was just something that affected the gay community.
And in context, was any homosexuality allowed on the Isle of Man? Was it anything legal at that stage?
No, you know, it was complete criminalisation, and basically the 1967 Act was not
in the UK. It wasn't
here, and so you had you know, sort of people's lifestyle that was not criminal in mainland Britain was criminal on the Isle of Man.
Was this time when the police were doing people in toilets and all that sort of goings on?
There'd been, I think that was the other thing, there'd been a lot of high-profile cases. It was also interesting because in the media, when people were being interviewed, there was a general impression that most people were actually homophobic, they didn't want the law changed. But it was interesting that I can remember at the time when you spoke to people, most people had somebody in their family or a friend who was gay. And actually they didn't have problems. But it was, in some senses, a vocal minority that gave the impression that there was a general opinion that no one wanted the law changed. So
when Alan Shea went down the Tynwald Hill, pathway, in those days no one really gave in grievances, did they? I mean, this was a really quite an unusual thing to see. I mean, these days you get 10 to 15.
Yes.
It was more unusual,
there would have been a few, but I think actually you could say that in retrospect this reminded people that as just an ordinary member of the public, you know, Tynwald Day is not just about a public holiday and a public celebration. It is an opportunity for the people to be part of the democratic process. Our Parliament is in front of us.
But he got abuse in this. He went down, I believe. He got comments and that sort of. It must be incredibly tough to have done what he did.
You look at it, and it was an incredibly brave and terrifying thing to do. But having made that statement, and particularly because this uniform makes people think of the concentration camps, it makes people realise how the gay community has been persecuted in the past in other places, and then to kind of go, okay, so what's happening on the island at that time? And I find it interesting that it wasn't that long before legislation was changed on the Isle of Man, and there was a decriminalisation. But then how in the years since then...
We went ahead of the UK, didn't we? I mean,
exactly.
It was a game-changing moment, wasn't it? We suddenly went from being behind to almost, they legalised same-sex marriages here before. We had an outwardly gay Chief Minister, and all sorts of things happened.
Exactly. So it's interesting that what has taken the UK 50 years, once change happened, and once I think it was realised that actually the vast majority did not have problems with that legal reform, then suddenly everything comes into place.
Okay. Well, thanks for showing us today. I know it's available on the iMuseum anyway, but at some point this will end up in some sort of display. I'm guessing it won't.
Yes, I mean, I always sort of say every object sort of has its moment, and there are a variety of different ways that this item can be displayed in the future. But what's amazing now is that through the iMuseum and online, you can see the pictures of it, you can read about it, so that's making the collections much more accessible.